There comes a moment when your presence becomes so normal, so constant, that it begins to be taken for granted. The laughter, the energy, the support, the carrot becomes background noise, like the hum of electricity in a room. But here's the truth. The moment you step away, the very thing that was ignored becomes the very thing that is desperately missed. Your absence shakes the ground. Your disappearance ignites a fire of realization. When you disappear, something powerful happens. It's not just about leaving a room or walking away from a situation. It's about shifting the energy. It's about creating space where silence speaks louder than words, where absence becomes the teacher, and where longing grows into awareness. In that emptiness, the value of your presence is magnified 100 times over, and this is why disappearing can carry more weight than staying. Your withdrawal creates contrast, it forces reflection. It brings forward emotions that were buried under routine. Suddenly, what was dismissed is now treasured, what was overlooked is now painfully clear. Let's break down why this happens and how it transforms the dynamic. When you are always available, your presence begins to blend into the background, almost like the air people breathe, necessary but unnoticed. It's human nature to grow comfortable with what is consistently there, and because of that, the mind stops paying attention to the depth of value it provides. Your calls, your texts, your presence, your care. When it comes without pause, it becomes routine. But the moment you step away, the pattern shatters. What was once predictable suddenly becomes uncertain, and in that uncertainty, awareness awakens. Absence has a way of breaking the autopilot that people operate on, forcing them to suddenly recognize the weight of what they've been given all along. Think about it. When everything is handed easily, it often feels less important. But when it is no longer within reach, the craving begins. The laughter that once filled the space now feels haunting in its absence. The encouragement that was always ready is now missed at the very moment it's needed most. It is in this breaking of the pattern that the power of your presence is revealed. People are shaken out of their comfort when the energy they've been leaning on is suddenly gone. That void speaks louder than anything you could have said while you were still there. Disruption has always been the birthplace of realization. Just like in life when routines are broken, whether by change, loss, or transformation, that's when clarity strikes. The same happens in relationships. Your disappearance is that disruption. It forces the other person to confront what life feels like without you woven into it. No more instant access to your warmth, no more daily reminders of your support, no more presence to fill the quiet moments. And suddenly, the silence isn't just silence anymore, it's a sharp reminder of everything that used to exist. The beauty of breaking a pattern is that it creates contrast. Contrast is what makes people see the difference between light and dark, comfort and discomfort, abundance and emptiness. Without your absence, there's no contrast, and without contrast, there's no realization. By stepping away, you create a before and an after. The before was taken for granted, the after feels hollow and heavy. That shift forces recognition in ways that words, reminders, or explanations never could. It makes someone stop and ask themselves, what did I lose? Why does this feel so heavy now? What they miss is not just the physical presence, but the energy, the consistency, the stability you represented. And that is why absence is such a powerful teacher. It leaves space for someone to sit with themselves, to feel the lack, to wrestle with the emptiness. That break in routine exposes the truth. You were never ordinary, never background noise. You were the foundation, the anchor, the spark. They may not have noticed it when you were there every moment, but the pattern had to break for the realization to surface. And in that breaking, your value shines brighter than ever before. When distance enters, something powerful happens. Silence begins to speak. It's not just the absence of words or actions, it's the sudden awareness of how much space you once filled, the energy, the laughter, the comfort, the consistency. It all used to be there without needing to be requested. But when you disappear, the quiet grows heavy. That silence becomes a mirror, reflecting back the truth that was once ignored. It's in those still moments when the mind starts to wander, when the heart starts to ache, and when the realization hits. What once seemed ordinary was, in fact, extraordinary. Distance strips away the noise of constant interaction and forces a person to listen to their own thoughts. And those thoughts are often laced with memories, your words, your presence, the way you made them feel. Suddenly, things they never paid much attention to become the very things they crave. The tone of your voice, the way you understood them without explanation, the unique light you brought into their life, these elements take on a new weight in the silence of your absence. That space you leave behind transforms into a stage where every memory of you plays over and over. What's fascinating about distance is that it magnifies appreciation. It makes small details loom large. The simplest text that was once overlooked now feels like a precious artifact in their memory. The smile they didn't stop to cherish now replays vividly in their mind. The gestures, once assumed, now carry a sense of rarity and value. It is only in the gap of your absence that these things rise to the surface, demanding to be acknowledged. In that sense, disappearance is not just about taking space, it's about creating room for appreciation to grow. Distance also creates longing, and longing is one of the most transformative emotions a person can experience. Longing pulls at the heart, creates restlessness in the soul, and brings clarity about what truly matters. When someone begins to long for your presence, they are no longer coasting through interactions with you. They are deeply aware of your importance. Longing connects them to the reality that without you, life feels incomplete. This is the moment when appreciation evolves into desire. Desire to feel again what your presence provided so effortlessly before. And here's the truth. People often only begin to see clearly when something is gone. Distance becomes the teacher that words cannot be. Silence becomes the echo that cannot be ignored. Your absence becomes the undeniable evidence of your significance. They start to realize it wasn't just your actions, your words, or your presence. It was the way you changed the texture of their life. Without you, the edges feel rougher, the nights feel longer, and the days seem emptier. That is the true power of distance. It forces people to sit with themselves, face the void, and finally recognize the treasure they once held in their hands but never truly saw until it was no longer within reach. When you disappear, emotions surface that were once buried beneath the comfort of routine. In your presence, people often assume stability. They lean into the rhythm you create, sometimes without even realizing how much they rely on it. But once you're gone, the stability they depended on vanishes, and emotions they never acknowledged come rushing to the surface. The mind may try to deny it, to reason it away, but the heart speaks louder. The feelings that were once taken for granted are now impossible to ignore. They rise like waves, sometimes overwhelming, sometimes subtle, but always present, reminding them of the irreplaceable role you played in their life. This surfacing of emotion is not just about sadness or regret. It's about awakening. It's about suddenly becoming aware of what has been lost and how deeply it mattered. Emotions carry truth. They break down walls of pride, arrogance, or distraction, and they reveal the raw reality underneath. Someone may have thought they were strong enough to move forward untouched, but when you disappear, the truth hits. They feel it in the pit of their stomach, in the ache of their chest, in the restless energy that refuses to settle. Emotions that were once quiet now scream for attention, and here's what makes this so powerful. Those emotions are not just fleeting feelings, they are lessons. They teach that presence matters. They teach that connection is not to be dismissed. They teach that every shared moment, no matter how small, carries weight. In the absence of your presence, every little thing that was overlooked becomes amplified by memory, a laugh, a glance, a word spoken in kindness. These are no longer casual moments. They transform into anchors of emotional truth. They stir up longing, regret, and realization all at once. Emotions also bring vulnerability. When you disappear, the mask of certainty falls away. The person left behind can no longer hide behind distractions or the illusion of control. They are faced with their own raw humanity, and in that space they begin to realize just how deeply they care, even if they never admitted it before. Vulnerability can feel like weakness in the moment, but it is also the birthplace of honesty. For the first time, they are forced to confront the truth of what they feel without your presence to soften it. The emotions that rise in your absence are proof of your impact. They cannot be fabricated or replaced. They are real, undeniable signals that you were more than just a passing presence. You were a force that shifted their inner world. When you disappear, those emotions carve themselves into memory, creating a permanent imprint. And while emotions can be painful to face, they are also transformative. They mark the beginning of change, of growth, and of deep acknowledgement. In your disappearance, emotions rise not to torment but to reveal, to awaken, and to remind them of the treasure they may have taken for granted until it was no longer within reach. When you disappear, the mind begins to wander and search for meaning in every detail of the past. Suddenly, moments that once seemed ordinary are replayed with new significance. The brain becomes a storyteller, piecing together fragments, asking questions, and creating meaning from silence. It replays conversations, small gestures, and even the quiet spaces in between. This reflection becomes unavoidable because the mind hates emptiness. It needs to fill the gap you left behind with something, and in doing so, it forces a deeper awareness, one that wasn't present before. This reflection is not a surface-level thought process. It's intense, it's personal, and it digs into places that were once ignored. The mind begins to ask, what did I overlook? What did I miss? Why does their absence feel so heavy? These are not casual questions, they are powerful internal confrontations that stir up honesty. They push someone to realize what was right in front of them but went unappreciated, and in that searching they discover that what seemed small was, in truth, monumental. Reflection also brings clarity. It's often in the silence, in the absence, that people finally see things clearly. When you were there, perhaps the noise of routine clouded their vision, but when you're gone, the silence acts as a mirror. It forces them to see what they couldn't see before, that your presence shaped their world in ways they never truly acknowledged. Reflection cuts through pride, distraction, and even denial. It shows them a reality they cannot escape. You mattered more than they allowed themselves to admit. And reflection doesn't stop at the past. It extends into the future. The mind begins to wonder what life will look like without you, and that vision feels incomplete, even unbearable at times. This forward reflection stirs urgency because now they're not only grieving what they had but also fearing what they'll never have again. That fear, that sense of loss, compels them to look inward, to reevaluate, and to consider changes they never would have thought about before. Your disappearance acts like a catalyst for this process. It is the spark that ignites a mental journey they cannot avoid. Reflection becomes the bridge between their present reality and the lesson your absence is teaching. It may feel uncomfortable, even painful, but it's in that discomfort that growth begins. It's where denial turns into awareness, where pride breaks down into humility, and where confusion shifts into undeniable truth. Reflection, triggered by your absence, is the turning point that reshapes not only how they see you, but also how they see themselves. When you disappear, emotions that were once buried beneath the surface begin to rise with a force that cannot be contained. At first there may be denial, an attempt to push down the weight of your absence, but as the days stretch on, the emotional intensity becomes undeniable. Feelings of longing, regret, and even desperation start to emerge, flooding the heart in ways that cannot be controlled. It is as if your absence unlocks a door to emotions they never wanted to face, emotions that now come rushing through with a power that leaves them vulnerable and exposed. This emotional wave is not gentle. It is raw and often overwhelming. It strips away the masks that pride or indifference once put in place. The heart cannot lie when it feels the sting of emptiness, and so every emotion that was once ignored now demands to be felt. They may feel anger at themselves for not cherishing you, sorrow for the moments they can't get back, and a deep yearning for the comfort that only your presence brought. These emotions may be confusing, messy, and difficult, but they are real and they are powerful. In this state, the smallest reminders of you can carry enormous weight. A scent, a song, a place you once visited together, suddenly, all of these trigger floods of memories and emotions. What once blended into the background now becomes vivid, magnified by the ache of missing you. And in those moments, the truth is undeniable. You were the anchor that steadied them, and without you, their emotions are left untethered, swirling in chaos. The beauty of emotional intensity, however, is that it leaves no room for indifference. It forces the heart to care, even if the mind tries to resist. It breaks down the walls of detachment and reveals the truth of what you meant. This intensity is often the very thing that awakens someone to the depth of their feelings. They can no longer pretend that your presence was optional or replaceable. Their emotions remind them day after day that you carried a weight in their life no one else can. Your disappearance becomes the trigger for this awakening. Without it, they may never have truly faced what was inside them. Emotional intensity is painful, but it is also transformative. It is the storm that clears the skies, the fire that burns away illusions, and the undeniable proof that you mattered in ways they never confessed when you were near. It is through this emotional upheaval that they finally come face to face with the truth. Missing you isn't just a thought, it's a feeling that consumes the very core of who they are. When you disappear, the search for meaning begins. It is no longer just about missing the presence of someone. It becomes about questioning everything that was once taken for granted. Silence has a way of forcing reflection, and in that silence, every word, every action, every moment shared begins to replay over and over like a movie in the mind. Suddenly, what was once overlooked now shines with clarity, and what was once dismissed now carries profound importance. They begin to wonder, why didn't I notice this before? Why didn't I appreciate it when it was right in front of me? This search for meaning becomes relentless. They start looking for signs, piecing together fragments of conversations, gestures, and experiences to make sense of what your absence truly represents. In this process, they realize that your presence was not just physical. It carried emotional, mental, and even spiritual weight. You weren't just a part of their life, you were the thread that held together many aspects of their world. Without you, they are forced to confront not just the loss of a person, but the loss of balance, comfort, and security. The power of disappearance is that it forces a deep inner reckoning. They begin to question who they were when you were there, who they are without you, and who they want to become moving forward. It is in this searching that they realize the value of what was lost. This is not a shallow missing. It is a soul, deep yearning that ignites the desire to reconnect, to repair, or at the very least, to never take such presence for granted again. And while this search can feel painful, it is also a gift. It teaches lessons that comfort never could. It strips away illusions and confronts them with truth. Through this process, they realize that the meaning of your absence is not just about missing you. It's about understanding the irreplaceable role you played. It becomes clear that no distraction, no substitution, no attempt to fill the void can match the impact you carried. In the end, this search for meaning transforms them. They are left with a deep respect for presence, for connection, and for the intangible power one soul has on another. Your disappearance becomes the mirror they cannot look away from, reflecting not just the pain of missing you, but the undeniable truth of how much they needed you. That truth alone is enough to shift their entire perspective forever. The message we've uncovered today is powerful. Absence is not empty. Absence is presence magnified. When you disappear, it forces reflection, it creates longing, and it awakens awareness that comfort and consistency often silence. The truth is, we are rarely noticed as deeply in the moment as we are when we are gone. That's not a flaw, it's human nature, but it's also the reason why disappearing, stepping back, or pulling away ignites such deep emotional impact. It exposes the irreplaceable role you played in another's life, a role that could never be duplicated. What begins as silence quickly transforms into an echo that rattles the mind and stirs the heart. Every word unspoken, every moment missed, every gesture taken for granted suddenly becomes significant. They begin to search for meaning, to piece together the puzzle of your presence, realizing that the very things they once dismissed were the foundation of what gave them stability. This kind of realization doesn't fade, it lingers, it grows, and it teaches them that the space you left behind is far greater than they imagined. Through this journey, a critical truth emerges. You carry a power that goes beyond the surface. You hold an energy that shapes how others see themselves, how they feel, and how they connect to the world. When you disappear, you don't just remove yourself from their life. You take with you the strength, the balance, and the comfort that your presence provided. That void cannot be filled with substitutes. It is unique, it is defining, and it is unforgettable. And while it may hurt to know that sometimes it takes your absence for others to truly appreciate your worth, remember this: their realization is a testament to your value. It is proof that you are not just another person passing through someone's life. You are a force, a presence that matters deeply, even when unspoken. The pain of your disappearance becomes the teacher they never asked for but desperately needed. It's the reminder that nothing real, nothing valuable, nothing truly impactful should ever be taken for granted. So as we conclude, let this message live inside you. Never underestimate the power of your presence and never fear the impact of your absence. Both carry lessons, both ignite transformation, and both prove your worth in ways words cannot fully capture. You are not replaceable, you are not forgettable, and you are not invisible. When you disappear, you are missed deeply, not because of the void you leave, but because of the light you once gave. And that light is the truth of who you are. Thank you, my friends, for giving your time, your energy, and your open heart to this message today. Every word shared was not just about reflection. It was about awakening, about reminding you of the undeniable value you carry. Your presence here proves that you are ready to rise into that awareness, to own your strength, and to never again question the impact you leave behind. As we part ways, remember this: you are not defined by who notices you when you're around, but by who feels the emptiness when you're gone. That is your proof, that is your power, and that is the reason why you must never doubt your place in this world. I am grateful for your attention, for your willingness to listen, and most importantly, for the courage you show by embracing these truths. Carry them forward into every space you walk into, and let them remind you that your presence is the gift, your energy is the anchor, and your absence is the lesson others will never forget. So, until we meet again, stand tall in your worth. Speak with the fire of your truth, and when silence is needed, let it be the silence that teaches more than words ever could. Goodbye for now, and thank you again. Keep shining, keep believing, and never forget, you are unforgettable.